Welcome back to the 7th grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about Grandpa's armor. With all the changes that are going on in the world, I notice how there's a lot of attention on little girls and young ladies and women's rights. And, people talk about on the opposite end how toxic masculinity is a thing and it's something to look out for, and everybody's triggered about this and that, and everybody's so fucking sensitive. But it appears that nobody is looking out for little boys. And when I say little boys, I mean all boys of all ages and
all races, not just black, not just white, not Mexican, not
all little
what are we
boys.
talking about? Yeah.
And the reason why is I mention this is because little boys are just as valuable as little girls. Children are precious, no matter what their gender is. But little boys in particular, I'm focusing on because I'm a man, and I was a little boy, and I was fortunate enough to be raised by a real man. And what I notice is a deficit of applied masculinity
That's deep
nowadays. And
I just saw a clip from Dr. Phil, and it was about that transgender clip. And the mom, the mom is a mom of a boy who's trying to transition. And she's like, look, my problem with President Biden is the fact that it's black men dying every day, but the only ones you talk about are the ones wearing wigs. So for some reason, if you're masculine, you're discounted. But if you got a wig on and you wear a dress and you're a man, then all of a sudden your well-being is at the forefront. That shit is fucked.
Check this out. If there is a small boy, a young man in your life, then you need to pay attention to him. You need to pay attention to what you say around him and what you do around him, because that young man is absorbing everything that you do and say. And so even something as small as taking that little boy to the park and throwing the ball with him. If you don't have a baseball, if you don't have a glove, if you don't have a football, if you just have a basketball or a soccer ball, just take him away from everybody else and have him just play catch with you. Just throw the ball back and forth and teach him how to catch the ball properly. Teach him to not be afraid of the ball. Teach him to throw the ball with force of varying degrees, and teach him stance. His power distribution. Power distribution in young men is very important because it's something that is both psychological and physical. So once a young man is taught a good stance and how to distribute his power evenly, he can then develop his physical language in a more robust and evenly distributed way.
Look, when you see this shit, you'll get it. Like me and my homeboy, we had left a gun show the other day, and we were pulling through the park. And we see this white dude running. And when you saw the motherfucker running, this shit is what you're describing right now. This nigga ran like he had big titties. He had like his hands were close and he's jogging like, I'm like, who the fuck? This white dude was running like Dolly Parton. And I'm like, oh man, no, that's not right. That's not even efficient. That's not effective. Like, bro, you're all wrong. And I don't know if he was gay or not. That's not part of it. But it's mechanics. It's about mechanics.
He wasn't educated on body mechanics early.
Yes, his mechanics.
Because the reason why I'm saying this is that as somebody who practices martial arts and still trains actively, I can tell you that the body can be more effective in channeling energy through the limbs when you learn how to properly project yourself through time and space.
Look, muscle memory is a motherfucker. Like you hear it a lot more when somebody's like a lefty, like you're a left-hander, or they're ambidextrous. That shit takes work to do it right. And that, yes, you drill yourself over and over, you drill it, and then later on. But that shit right there is a prime example of, yeah. Look, just when you spend time with a little boy, with a male. Even if the whole Transformer thing, like my daughters have a little brother, like he loves Transformers. I got a Transformer stuff, show him how to do it. They remember that stuff. They remember. That's how you work. What you're doing is you're essentially teaching engineering. You're showing something. The toys that we had growing up, G.I. Joe, Transformers, He-Man, first Star Wars. You know, that stuff made you
Okay,
mechanically sound.
it does that, but it does two things simultaneously. You're using both parts, both
Both
hemispheres of the
hemispheres.
brain.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so
very true.
it's an indirect hemisync. And so what's going on with these types of toys is that you're using your analytical mind, and
Yep.
then you have
Your
to
artistic
operate
fantasy mind. Yeah.
within you have to populate that creative universe with your imagination. And so you have to extend the playset beyond what's physical.
Look, you remember when you got a GI Joe vehicle and they had on one side they showed you how to put it together, on the other side they had the schematics, 50 millimeter. That shit, it fuck with you. It just.
I would see these commercials where they would have these elaborate sets, and it would be something like in the side of a hill, and then like they had dug out a hole, and then that was like the Cobra cave that held, the Terror Dome. And I'm like, dude, that's fire.
We did that shit. We were the black kids with the playset. You know what I'm saying? We designed
But
that
that's the
shit.
thing
You
though.
had rocks in your front yard.
That's the key right there.
That was real to us.
Because playing outside, we were happy to take our toys outside. We wanted to take our toys outside because the couch cushions were not enough. The basement with the wood paneling 80s style was not enough. And like you would go and you would like take them to the washroom and like try and fabricate an area inside the washroom. It did not cut it. You had to go outside where there was landscapes and foliage and dirt and rocks and mountains you could create into a desert atmosphere where you could have these robots fighting. And you know what I'm saying?
Dude, we had different dimensions. Like you would go from, oh my God.
This is what I'm getting at though. It's like if there's little boys around you, encourage them to do that stuff. Encourage them to go outside and use their third eye to create that playscape where they can add more to it, where they can add value to their existence with what they already have.
Not all masculinity is toxic. There are certain words that all of a sudden, because of the media, they just go together, like conspiracy theorists. They just like, oh, not every conspiracy is a theory. Not all masculinity is toxic, but now those two words go together, and it's like a catchphrase. That shit ain't cool. Like these young men, I'm not talking about they need direction. No, they just need somebody to play with, where like their ideas are being cultivated. Like, okay, I got an idea and I want to do this. Like, hey, let's try this, or let's climb this tree. Look, we climbed trees in my backyard. We did all these different things. We went everywhere. And sometimes you would see stuff and you're like, oh man, that would make a great toy. Or, oh man, I can't wait to get a hold of that. And use it for it's not meant to be used for. Or, I remember building birdhouses in my garage. Me and you, like, we built all kinds of stuff. We had no kind of idea, no measuring.
We used to get in the car with his mom, and she would take us across town to, like, your mother would go looking for a bargain in the most way out
20
places.
miles.
30 miles, like, you know what I'm saying? Just to save like $1 on something. I'm like, and it didn't matter to us because we know that we was going on a mission because we were going to find some shit. And along the way,
Black Jew will save money, don't give a damn.
And along the way, we would drive by this part of town that have these bluffs, and they're basically cliffs, right? And these cliffs, they have this exposed rock and soil, so it looks like the southwestern desert. And it looked like stuff that we would see in cartoons. Like, man, that would be so great to be playing right there. You know what I'm saying?
Jump off that. Or I remember, like, okay, the weeping willow tree, and we were from elementary school. We had these steep hills, and we would jump on this tree and swing like Tarzan, dude, and like swing like 15, 20 feet. We fell. Didn't matter.
Yes.
Just jump right back.
No. We would catch some serious air on them fucking willow trees, dude. Like,
so people ain't gonna.
People don't believe us, man. But see, what y'all gotta understand, like, this hill, this
deep.
This hill is probably about 5 stories high. Easily a 5-story building, but it is just a hill that slopes, and it has like a 35-degree angle on it.
And then you had a bunch of trees, and my one neighbor had a weeping willow tree. And that thing was strong as hell. And we would swing from we would literally run and jump, and it was like a leap of faith.
But check this out. But then in the wintertime, this became a snow mountain, right? This became an ice mountain. So then I would take my sled and I would climb to the top of this big ass icy hill. And see, I would wait until the day when it had drizzled on top of that snow, and then it's frozen over. So they got this ice glaze on it. Now, mind you, there's a semi-busy street at the bottom of this hill. So we're just like sliding down to our death, you know what I'm saying? Sledding down, doing 40 miles an hour down this hill.
Easily.
40 miles an hour down this hill into oncoming traffic, giving zero fucks. Listen, this sounds dangerous, and like any mother listening to this, be like, I would never let my son do that. Of course you wouldn't. But he will go and do this shit anyway.
Born in the 70s, raised in the 80s, no helmets. Nigga, we no helmets. Look, if you saw a kid with a helmet, you made fun of him.
You was a clown or you had special needs.
Yeah, like, oh, hey, man, he has a soft spot up there. He got to wear a helmet.
Yeah.
The rest of us, concussion was, there was no concussion protocol. How about that, nigga? No concussion protocol. We would go down that hill, and then you ever, like a rich white kid show up with an inner tube. Oh, man, there was so much speed with the inner tube going down that hill. Ridiculous. Fucking ridiculous.
No, but see, I had that wooden and like steel Hans Christian Andersen
I already know what you're talking about.
I'm saying that fucking
Rosebud. You had Rosebud.
Yeah, I had the fucking Rosebud sled and shit, man. The fucking radio flyer of fucking sleds.
And you could steer that motherfucker better though. You see, that nigga you could steer. You could actually like avoid stuff. But if you had like the plastic one I had, shit, you was. Man,
but see, but that's what I'm saying, man. Like, all these things make you tough. And then, like, in the wintertime, like, you will walk places with your coat and your boots and your gloves on, just walking.
Like, you literally would get home and not realize how wet you were. Like, do you understand? Like, you would take the clothes off.
I mean, you got steam rising off of you. That's whatever. You know what I'm saying? But that
I'm
doesn't
saying
matter.
Wet. Yeah. You know how in Dragon Ball, when they take the weights off, like Goku, like, here's a little, that's how you take your clothes and boots off and it'd be heavy with sweat and water. And you ain't, look, there's nothing wrong.
Then you go inside, you make some hot chocolate, and you go watch some fucking movies or cartoons or whatever.
Yeah. Looney Tunes, that's all we had. That's why we were doing this shit.
Not true.
I mean, Looney Tunes literally taught us how to be dangerous. Like, that was the worst shit ever.
Okay. Look, all this I'm saying is because there are people that have agendas, and these are very rich people. And what they do is they hire people who have good intentions at the beginning, but they slowly come to mirror the things that they hate.
They deteriorate into some other shit real easily.
Into zealots. And this zeal is what drives them into trying to eliminate any forms of masculinity. Believe it or not, masculinity is the reason why we are safe right now and nobody is kicking down your door. Is because dudes fought wars to uphold laws, to protect where you live, and to create a sense of danger. The nature of man, the nature of testosterone, there are levels to respect, there are levels to aggression, there are levels to what men will do. And once men have set these boundaries that you don't come in here with that bullshit, then people begin to understand that, well, you don't go into that yard, acting crazy because he gonna come out with his shotgun.
You don't go in another man's house and act a certain way. I know Kevin Samuels is dead. I think I might have mentioned this before, but one of the things that he said that was real deep, he was talking about the difference between men and women and why these women do some things they do. He said between every man, there is a threat of violence. It's not a threat like I'm going to whoop your ass, but it's known, it's assumed that if I say the wrong thing, this can become physical. And women don't have that boundary. Like some women do now, but most of these women who are whether you call them Karens, the white women, or the black women, or Shaniquas, whatever you want to call them, the bottom line is that a lot of these women don't understand that. Between me and you, there is an unspoken rule that I respect you, you respect me. But if I disrespect you, there's an expectation of violence, not
retribution.
That's not there. I speak softly and I carry a big stick.
See, okay, even in that genteel phrase, it's letting you know that I'm a gentleman, but I will fuck you up if you disrespect.
Under still waters. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So
Hey, there's rocks in this river right here. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
there's a rough current up in that motherfucker. And so you got to understand that that was always something that was there. Now we're trying to eliminate that, and you eliminate that, and you're trying to say that life is better because there's no violence. And the thing is, then the only one who has violence are the government, and then these crazy terrorists that we can't protect ourselves from. No, that's the hustle. You're supposed to be able to protect yourself.
Okay,
And
check this out though. In the West, there's a saying: the West is still the West. That means there is an ideology that permeates the men of that area and the women too. Is that in some laws, in some towns, it manifests where if two men are having a fight in the street, the cops will actually let them fight and finish the fight, because there's an understanding that, listen, there's resolution, but also it's going to remove most of the residual aggression. So it's like, listen, if these two guys are fist fighting, it's a fair fight, let them go. Let them go. And let the fight finish unless it reaches a point where it appears that one man is trying to murder the other guy with his hands. You know what I'm saying?
Look, what gets people confused is when you think of the West, you think of L.A., Sacramento. You think of...
You got to think of Northern California. You got to think of Oregon, and you got to think of Washington, and you got to think of Wyoming, and you got to think of Montana.
You still got one or two major cities, like, Seattle, Washington, and you got one or two major cities, and so because of media, you think of a major city, but you don't realize most of that population does not reside in that. Excuse me, a large portion of the population resides in that city, but then the rest of that state, they chilling. The rest of that state, it's much more sparse. It's a different set of rules, and that's one of the things that was going on, like in Colorado. They literally was talking about separating Denver from the rest of Colorado. Like Denver was going to become southern Colorado, and then you had the rest of Colorado. What happens is these major cities, that's what you envision when you think of a place way out west. But no, them places is rural as fuck, and they have a different set of rules, and they know that help might not be coming. And so if you walk on somebody's property,
also, let me stop you right there. I have to stop you because there's city folks listening to this show, and there's this false frailty that's been bred in the city people, and they forget their black cowboy lineage, and they forget that the fact that Negroes are on horses with guns on their hips, protecting themselves and their families and their land. So
growing crops and
listen,
take care of
so listen to me. So that don't be afraid of gun ownership. I'm not telling you to go out and buy, a automatic rifle or semi-automatic rifle. Get yourself a pistol. Okay? But what I'm saying is that when you encounter other white people with guns, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid even if it's not a terse encounter. Don't be afraid because they are exercising their right. And you shouldn't be intimidated by that person exercising their right, because guess what? You have the rights to exercise your own rights of the Second Amendment and protect yourself. So listen, white people with guns, hey, listen, encourage that. That's good for them, okay? Because guess what? It's also good for you.
Look, we're going down a rabbit hole. Okay, so first thing, one of the things that nobody ever wants to address is the fact that, we have a lot of crime in the black community. Well, there are many reasons. It's multifaceted. Everything from lack of work, drug use, yada, yada, yada. But one thing that also screwed the black community is the civil rights movement when y'all uplift Martin Luther King and this nonviolent bullshit. So a lot of niggas took that nonviolence to mean no guns. And you got a lot of women raising whole families, not just boys, but raising whole families. And yeah, I subscribe to King, nonviolent. Hey, I'm a Christian, nonviolent. But everything in the Bible is violent. David knocked out Goliath, 5 stones, killed his brother. You have to be able to protect yourself. So nonviolent does not mean non-protect. And that's something that's been screwed into our heads. Second, if you have a criminal element, a large criminal element in your community, and they know that you're not having guns, that criminal element gets out of control a lot faster. So pay attention. When you look at these rural white areas where you got meth now, but even then, you don't have the same amount of break-ins. You know why? Because they know these old motherfuckers is packing heat. So people treat you different when they know that you're packing heat. And it's something that nobody wants to admit. So look, I'm not big. I know open carry is kind of a complicated conversation, especially for an African American, black man, Native American, whatever you want to call yourself. That's a little more complicated because.
But check this out. But see, here's the thing, though. Once people see that you have a sidearm, the level of respect goes up because they don't want to smoke because they want to keep living, or they don't want the danger being put in the hospital by going into gun battle with you. So, but also, there is the fact that, oh, this guy's cool. This guy is somebody that respects the second. And it's like, all right, you and I agree on this off the rip. So then it's like a mutual respect that's unspoken.
It's like it's, you know how you do the nod when you see somebody who you know, like, you're a martial artist, so you can spot another martial artist, like you give them a little head nod, and like, yeah. That head nod, you know what that means? If something goes down, me and you can take care of this. You know,
or it also means I see you, man.
Oh yeah, definitely. I see what you're doing. It's not a negative way. It's like, I respect. Yeah, I got you. I dig it. So, like I said, this is the stuff that you learn as a boy. This is the stuff you learn as a young man. And don't get me wrong, I teach my daughters a lot of stuff too because I have mostly daughters. In fact, me and my wife's youngest, she turns 21 this month. She already took her concealed carry class and passed it. She can't get it, get her license until her birthday, but she went and just took the class. Like, you want to teach people how to be adults, effective adults.
But trigger discipline is something that has to be taught.
Oh, no, when to pull and when not to pull. That is a whole other kind. But that's the emotional intelligence that you should be instilling in your little boy. You see a lot of sisters on Facebook, and I told my son to cry. There's nothing wrong with crying for the right reason. And I hate when people put stuff on Facebook and then they get mad when people comment on it. I said, that's why you put it out there in the first place. You wanted comments. So don't trip when somebody has a comment that that goes against what you were trying to establish. Look, women, there's nothing wrong with teaching your little boy to cry, but you need to teach your little boy how to have emotional intelligence. That's what you're not doing. Because what you're doing is teaching them how to have an emotional outburst. Like, okay, if you don't like what I say, it's fine to cry. No, it's fine to cry if something happens that's important. But teaching your son to have emotional intelligence is going to keep him from being aggressive when he doesn't need to be. It's going to teach him from being a woman beater. It's going to teach him to make a good decision when it comes to these different situations, because they're going to happen. And like, you don't understand that I don't want my son hitting a woman, but I want my son to be able to protect himself.
So check this out. One of my business associates was out of town traveling, and he was staying in like a seedy hotel, a rundown hotel. And he saw some young dudes just like sitting on the stairwells. Now, when the people are sitting in the stairwell in a hotel, they either don't have a room or they're hanging out with somebody that has a room, but they can't smoke in that room.
They smoking a cigarette.
Yeah, but you don't know the personality of these people. So what he did is he took his sidearm out and he just held it down by his leg. He didn't raise it, but he started walking up the stairs with his pistol in plain sight. Yep. So these kids could see it. He said they took a look at it, they looked at him, they gave him a nod, and they moved out the way. Now, I have been in situations where I'm walking up stairwells in situations like that, and I have to tell the kids, like, hey, I need you to move out the way. Because they'll sit in the stairwell in the middle, and they're just like kind of just move their shoulder off to the left.
Yeah, they're trying you. Sometimes it's just legitimate. There's so many people in there.
But then, what you do in this situation, look at me now. I'm like, I need you to move. You know what I'm saying? Like, I need you to move out the way, because what you're doing right now, you showing me that your mama didn't raise you right. So move out the way, man. You know what I'm saying?
Also, you showing me that you want me to bump into you, right, and then you can act a fool. No, I don't want to touch you. You don't want to touch me. I say, excuse me, and usually they get the fuck out the way.
Yeah.
But not everybody. But like I said, that's what decorum is for. But that is what I just talked about. That is that threat of violence, not threat as in motherfucker, I'm gonna kick your ass. That's I look at somebody, they're like, okay, I don't want no smoke. I don't want to infringe on you, but you shouldn't want to infringe on me either. And those and
then the appearance of a weapon, the appearance of a Desert Eagle, will basically, you know what I'm saying, cause most people to step out of your fucking way.
It changes the temperature in the room.
100%.
That changes the temperature in the room. But like I said, it's so important that you learn these lessons when you're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, then when you're 18, 19, 20, because you don't, the decorum ain't there. You don't know how to respond. Um, and this whole thing about emotional intelligence. The reason I'm bringing that up, how many of these so-called feminine men be beating up women? How many times have you seen these? I don't want to say fag, whatever you want to call the guy. These feminine men will hit a woman dead in her face as hard as hell, and I'm like, that's the shit I'm talking about. Like that's not acceptable. No
No, you
matter
don't hit a woman. You just tase them.
like like, hey, sometimes, dude, I've worked security where I'm like, hey, look, I'm not gonna.
Dude,
You gotta
listen,
do that shit sometimes.
I will not hit a woman, but I will fry your ass like bacon.
Look, get off me. Or I'll break your finger real quick. Just
Yeah,
teach you a lesson.
that's one
That's
thing
how.
you can do. You can break fingers. You can break people's fingers, and they're like, once you break this, let me say this to you: once you break bones, you'll get more compliance from people than you will.
Hey, this sounds so brutal, but what I'm saying is I'm not gonna but to go blast full bore in a woman's face, like bow, like I'm not doing that. I'm not hitting her in the chest. Fuck around, give her a bruise, cause breast. I'm not trying to hurt her, but I'm trying to. But when you're in a situation where a woman's putting her hands on you, like I said, as a security person, I toss them, or I grab that finger and twist, like, hey, see, stop. I'm just trying to get your attention, you know. But that's what we're talking about teaching. That level of aggression needs to be toned down when you're dealing with somebody in this situation. A woman's not going to normally be as strong as a man. Now, if a woman's blasting your face, your life is at stake, or you got a bunch of women, you got to protect yourself. But I'm saying that most of those situations don't call for that. Especially most of these situations we're going to talk about or a man-woman situation where y'all cohabiting in the same place, y'all young, y'all moved in together, y'all getting on each other's nerves, somebody's texting some other dude or some chick is texting that shit. This social media shit makes it really hard to
Listen,
have
there's so many things that you can do to a person without even punching them in the face. Dude, a really hard shin kick, really hard, really hard. Listen,
get
man,
off.
most people will calm down after you bruise that area right there in front of the shin.
Look, I'm not. Hold it. We're not talking about having an argument, kicking somebody in the shit. We're talking about
No, no, no. We're talking about defending yourself.
yeah. I'm saying as a man, the shit gets hairy. Like, hey, I gotta go. Let me get out this situation. Remove myself from this situation. You're with your woman, your wife, your girl, your whatever, and it's getting hectic. So you try to remove yourself from the situation. I've had women throw themselves in front of me, try to tackle me. Like my brother said, just hey, kick them in the shin, get the hell out of there. Remove
So
yourself from the situation.
check this out. The reason why I call this show Grandpa's Armor is because little boys always look for things to worship as heroes, right?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
they're looking for guidance. They're looking for a definition of what a man is. Whether they voice this or not, their cells are speaking this way. Because as human beings, that's our DNA. We want to see what made us. What can I be? How can I be the best version of myself? And what does that look like? Or what's close to it? What's good enough? And so when I was a kid, I grew up with these binoculars, right?
Yeah.
And
World War II
these
binoculars.
World War II binoculars.
Yeah.
And when I would look through these binoculars, I would get this special feeling. I would get the feeling of this is something that is sacred. This came from the battlefield. This was used in a time of war. This was used where men were killing each other. There was good versus bad. And this...
Me.
So these binoculars, man, like they were used in a time of war when there was black and there was white, meaning that there were absolutes, good and evil, winning and losing. And
It
so,
mattered.
and I would look to these. This is actually like one of the things that got me interested in cinematography because of the glass and the lenses.
I hold it. Do you remember like whenever like a TV show would have that binocular view, like they were like looking at something
Yep.
like mutual, and so that made me feel like I was part of a TV show or like I was in like you said in battle.
And
Because
you touch these binoculars, you looked at them plenty of times, but you remember like how they had this vintage feel. There was like an old leather strap that was on them, and they had this old leather case that had this smell to it, and the metal that they were made of, and the glass that it was old glass.
thick ass lens. Like if you broke them, the lens was like this thick, and you would like burn ants with
Dude,
it.
these were like 70 power binoculars. Like you could see like a mile away with these fucking things. Like they were incredible.
But
And
like I said, that's that shared experience. That's that shit that
that's
we're talking about.
grandpa's armor.
Yeah, that you hand it down, and like you know when you say look up to somebody, we're not talking about like this. No, we're looking for like, oh my, that's how a man's supposed to act. That's how you're supposed to stand. That's how you engage somebody. You shake your hand, look them in the eye, good stiff handshake. You know, you're communicating certain things, and you and in the end you respect that other person, even though this is something that we miss now. Nowadays, when y'all don't get when you disagree with somebody, they're your enemy. No, back then you disagree with them, but you respected their point of view. Like, okay, I don't see it that way, bruh. But you give them a pound and you go on about your business. If somebody sold drugs or somebody was like a mailman, you respected them the same. Like, hey, I made my decision to be this. You made your decision to be that. Nobody looked down on nobody. The amount of money didn't matter. It was like, you guys were equal and you respected that shit. Now, nah. If we get in a disagreement, I can't stand you. And this, like, nah, man, that's way too fucking emotional. You're not listening to the point of view. You can't learn when you're being that emotional about some shit. You just can't. You can't gather anything. You're not gaining anything.
Mm-hmm. Right. But this is what I'm talking about. Like, these artifacts of a time before are actually very important because these type of keepsakes remind us of sacrifices and
Transitions. Yep.
and winning and losing and what that means and what is lost, like what's sacrificed. And so you begin to understand, the value of life and death and how these will affect you later on because you begin to adopt these principles, right? So if these things aren't being passed on, if there aren't any keepsakes given to these boys, what are they learning? For me also, it was swords. And,
Shogun.
There were, and then I would come across, this was the 80s. So like the ninja boom was at its peak. It was going crazy. Everything was ninja this, ninja
I don't think
that.
it peaked. It was going up.
No, it was fucking insane. I was there riding that wave right along with it.
We started it.
But check it out. So
fuck them turtles.
I would go to martial arts stores and I would always look at the katanas, right? The samurai swords. And I could tell the ones that were knockoffs. And then every now and then I would come across a blade that was a couple 100 years old. And I'm like, oh, this has history. This is men killed people with this, and you understand in that moment when you touch the handle, when you touch the blade, there's something that's transmitted to you. There's an idea, there's a feeling, there's an energy, there's psychic residue that's on that blade, and you understand that, oh, this is from a different point in time.
Those mementos and keepsakes are so important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that's so deep about that is it's not just because, like I said, that we had these imaginations. Our imaginations would touch stuff, and I don't know if you would just be transformed or you would go someplace else or you would. But I think also on the flip side, without those mementos and keepsakes, history gets warped. It gets warped really bad. And I'm gonna give an example: the Civil War. Yeah, the North won the Civil War. But the South kept the mementos and their keepsakes, and one of the things they kept was racism. Like literally, we had all these rules and laws that freed us, but in the South, they basically held on to artifacts, they held on to those clan hoods, they held on to lynchings, and like literally, these motherfuckers would do shit, and like when they had a lynching, they would have a special train to bring people to that kind. They held on to those mementos, and that's because of that. Literally, they lost the war, but they won the battle. They won the long run. And black folks, I think instead of us holding on to stuff that would have helped us, we let go of all that shit. We like literally threw away our guns, we threw away our black towns, we threw away all that shit for segregation and integration, and not realizing that that's how we won this battle, was doing just the opposite. So it's important to have those keepsakes because they give you a point of reference. They give you that, like, hey, somebody had to fight a war. Even if a motherfucker lost, you still respect, like, this was their sword. You respect that. We didn't. We literally got rid of all the shit that made us strong.
There used to be this African drum that my parents had, and it had goat skin over it, and it had these. Basically, they took intestines, dried them, and stretched them out.
Yeah, yeah.
And they stretched them over the head so they went down the sides, right? But I would take this instrument. It was kind of like, it wasn't a bongo. It was bigger than a bongo, but it was a singular drum, and it was probably about 2 feet tall. And I would sit on the floor, and I would place this. I would sit crisscross applesauce, and I would put this, in between my legs, and I would drum. And this drum, just playing this drum, connected me to something, this knowledge that was blood knowledge. And it would take me to places psychologically when I would play it, because, playing that drum and playing certain rhythms had an effect on me.
It gives you confidence. It just your chest puffs out.
Right, but not just that, but like it activated the pineal gland and took me on these journeys. And this drum, it was, made by somebody in a village somewhere, and they took it to a bazaar and they sold it. I think my mom might have brought it back from Paris one time. And, I took this when she brought it home, and I would just go off and hide under the stairs and like play this drum. And I just remember this thing, having this effect on me. This thing that was built by somebody's hand. This is clearly handmade. And, made its way to my living room. And then I would take this thing and I would play it. That would give me all these psychosomatic reactions. And it's important to my musical development and my appreciation of music, because my dad at the time had a large vinyl record collection. And it was mostly jazz, and it was blues. And there was some music. There was an album he had. I think it was Roy Ayers and Fela Kuti. And there was an African dude and an African American dude. One was Afrobeat and the other was jazz. And they got together and made an album. And, I would listen to stuff like this, and I felt like I was sitting in the audience sometimes, or like sitting in these smoky jazz clubs, like listening to the music.
It transports you.
Because there's something about that medium of vinyl records, that organic analog medium, that has this way of transferring these mechanical sounds through the loudspeaker into these acoustic sounds, right? And back and forth. And so what it did, it allowed me, with my young imagination, to populate my soul space with the appreciation of music and space and depth, and to use this when I'm pondering things, or when I'm exploring new ideas, or when I'm working on creative projects. All these things, my dad's record collection, helped me to become the creative person that I am now.
Like, people don't get this digital analog shit. Like, think about a record. It's an exact recording. When you have a CD or some kind of digital recording, it fixes it. And you don't want it fixed. It actually removes certain sounds that it doesn't deem. But when you listen to a record, like a live performance, like, because your dad had James Brown, he had
he had this rare James Brown album called Hell. And when I tell people about this album, like, nobody remembers it.
No, they don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like, what is James Brown Hell? What is that? And it was all these songs about sin, right? It was a trip. But, the cool thing about a record is that there is artwork that goes with it. And the artwork of albums and see, sometimes you have a trifold or a gatefold, which is like, it opens up like a book, and you have all these different panels of artwork or photography. And to a young person, man, like, you're sitting there and you're reading like all the details and like all the liner notes, and
like, sometimes
Jimmy Robinson played drums on this one, and this guy played the clavinet on this one. I'm like, oh, that's some cool shit,
like look, like when you listen to like a live performance or like especially a comedy album, you can hear the audience out there yelling shit, or you hear or you can even hear one person's laugh above everybody else's. That shit is like fuck. Like you can hear this woman's laugh, like God damn, bitch. And so, like I said, this digital shit is not better. I get it. You can store a lot more albums, a lot more songs, yada yada yada. But when you sit there and you listen to a performance, or you listen to James Brown, and he talks about the upbeat, or he's talking about the melody, and you know, he was the band director, and you didn't understand how dope and deep James was until later on.
Even something as simple as like a live recording that has applause. Applause sounds different on vinyl than it
It
does
does, yes.
recorded digitally. It's something different. Like you just sound like you're there in the audience.
Look, something that you brought up.
Matter of fact, hold on. Let me talk about something that I discovered on my own, and that is comedy records. Because my father did not have comedy records. Okay, he had stuff like MLK on vinyl. You know what I'm saying, giving a speech, and JFK giving a speech, but he did not have Richard Pryor comedy records. So I would go to.
Who introduced you to him?
Myself. I did.
Yeah, because you introduced me.
Yes, but this is how it started. I used to watch Richard Pryor movies with my dad as a little boy. I mean, 4 years old, I'm watching Richard Pryor movies, right? And, and then cable comes out and they start showing them on TV. And so
when we say movies, we mean concert movies. We don't just mean his like the toy. We're talking about
no, not the narrative films. We're talking about the documentary films of his live comedy concerts. Yeah. And then there were albums that accompanied these, right? But there were also ones that were recorded in nightclubs. And that nigga's crazy, bicentennial nigga, like all these albums that weren't the big concert albums that were recorded in nightclubs in LA.
It's the pre-Warner Brothers stuff we talk about. If you
because you got the box set, like 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, longer than that. But the stuff that you had was like Shooting Craps.
Yes.
Ben the Blacksmith. You can't even say.
And Mudbone meets Dracula. And so what happened was I would go down. See, once I turned 10 years old, I had a paper out and I started making money. And I started making like $100 a month. And like for a kid, that's a good bit of bread. You know what I'm saying? So
like you were like a Richie Rich and shit. You was walking around, you got a dog named Dollar, you know what I'm saying?
But this is what I'm saying. Like, but I understood the value of $1 because I earned it myself, But I wasn't pissing my money away. I was buying shit that was building my creative space, my creative endeavors, right? And so one of the most valuable things that I bought were these Richard Pryor records. And so my dad would take me to this part of Omaha downtown called the Old Market. And the Old Market is like 160 years old. Like it's cobblestone streets. Like it's the oldest part of Omaha, right? It's right near the river and shit. And so this part of town is a treasure trove for like just antiques, records, old books, occult books, all different types of stuff, like dope restaurants, all that shit. And so my dad and I would go to these record stores. And, he would be off looking for wherever he was looking for. And so, I would go get on the bus and I would go down there by myself. And I was an industrious little kid, man. I would go get on the bus by myself and I would go down to the record store and I would start flipping through the records. I would look through all the hip hop stuff. I'm like, all right, that's cool. And then I started like walking over to this area that said comedy. I said, what's this about?
What the fuck is comedy?
Yeah, like you got comedy on records? So I started flipping through this shit. I saw Flip Wilson and I would see, Dick Gregory. And I'm like, Richard Pryor, right there. I want this one. And so I would take this, I would go home, I would take these records and I would listen to them. And then I'm laughing my ass off. I'm like, I don't want to be laughing at this shit by myself. So I'm like, duct tape. Listen to this crazy shit. Listen to what he's talking about, man.
I remember I had an old ass record player in my room. I had like 2 speakers at the bottom, and you play that shit, and you like, oh my god, this is the funniest. Richard Pryor raised me. People don't get that. Like if you ask me who I look up to, Richard Pryor, Malcolm X, of course, Muhammad Ali. But Richard Pryor was, when he talks about his grandmother running the whorehouse, when he talks
Yeah.
about the coldest day ever, when he talks about that shit, like shit was
This is
unfair to pick by
before. This is
itself.
before they made that movie about him, JoJo Dancer, because that was like after we had learned
Yeah,
about all this shit.
yeah, we learn from the records. Then JoJo Dancer comes out, which people don't get. JoJo Dancer is loosely, it's not a full fledged based on Richard Pryor. Rich wrote it. Is Rich's, but there's some things he left out that was too painful. Or how about when he was in love with that white girl and he gave her the ring and she was fucking his producer. That shit. You don't put that shit in whatever happened to him must have been worse because you don't put that shit in the movie. So
But see,
Rich
the funny thing is though, like
was
he talked
vulnerable.
about his pain all the time.
Yes, he's very vulnerable. Look, one of the deepest things that you brought up, because when you talk about Richard Pryor, you know about his mom being a whore, you know about his father, you know about his grandmother. But something you brought up the other day, or yesterday, shit, fuck the other day, like this whole thing about orphans. And you said some really deep shit. You was like, if you pay attention, a lot of the things about orphans have been like, it's like a mystique. It's been glamorized, and something you were saying some real deep shit about people. If you ain't got no past, if you don't know yourself, then it's easy to be taken advantage of. It's even easier for you to take advantage of others because you have no, what's the word I'm looking
Because you're
for?
your own representative in an adult world.
And that shit is fucked up.
It's
And
hard. It's a hard road to travel. Let's just talk
and
about it. Let's just talk about it. All right.
yeah, because the shit that you said, it was real deep, that we literally mystify orphans. Like it's some kind of mystique. Like, okay, they make the best spies.
Yeah,
They
but
make the
guess who
best.
else does that? Pedophiles. And
Exactly.
over the weekend, it has been exposed that Ari Spears and Tiffany Haddish made a comedy skit in 2014. And in this comedy skit, it was very low budget. It was made with it looks like it was made with like some like DSLR camera or some cheap ass camcorder. And I don't know if this guy is making this video because he's trying to shop this idea to some like comedy executives or whatever, but it was in poor taste. So in this video, it's called The Mind of a Pedophile. And in this video, Tiffany Haddish, it takes place inside of a house. And Tiffany Haddish comes downstairs. She brings a child downstairs. She's carrying the child on her hip. And she sits the child down who's in his underwear. And for some reason, this kid does not have any clothes on. But yet you want to sit your kid in front of a stranger, essentially, to watch him, and he's in his drawers. So this kid is sitting in his drawers, and this pedophile slash babysitter is sitting across from him with a newspaper with holes cut into it, looking at this child. So there's more, the video goes on, and there's parts of the video where there's a little girl, and they're trying to teach her fellatio, how to suck a dick. And all of this is being done at the expense of these children. These children are being used for these thirsty ass, wannabe famous people, and they're willing to exploit children
Look, the
sexually.
issue is we don't get this. Like, what is the context? What are you guys going for? Was it part of a movie that got axed?
Mm-mm.
What the
It
fuck?
wasn't. You can tell it wasn't.
Look, I ain't seen this shit. I don't. Something. No, this is some crazy shit. When the R. Kelly tape first came out, the one person that said some deep shit was Dr. Dre, and they had asked him, "Have you heard about the R. Kelly tape? Is that another?" He said, "Look, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it because if that girl is a minor, like you say she is, then this is child porn. I want nothing to do with it." Now we know Dre is a piece of shit when it comes to women, but when it came to this one point when
See,
everybody,
but that's the thing, though. He had a line that he wasn't
yes,
crossing.
he wouldn't cross. Look, when we talk about this shit, I'm gonna give you an example. I was in high school, and my high school had took us to Chicago, and it's called Jewtown or whatever, and we were in that part of Chicago where they were selling it on every corner. You had a guy walking around with a videotape, or I think DVDs might have just been kind of coming around, and they were just literally selling it everywhere. And so the point we're making is that people who are hurt other people, but people who don't have any connection, they're grooming people. They're doing this fucked up ass shit, and this is what's so important when you talk about grandpa's armor. When you have a point of reference. When, like, I told you I had this talk with my daughter. Like, decide right now what you're willing to do. Decide before you get the job. Decide before you go to Hollywood. Decide before you go to college what you're willing to do. Because when you make a decision now, it'll help you later on. But when you don't know what you're willing to do, this is the
Dude,
shit we're talking about.
okay. They were casting extras for this movie called Tu Wong Fu back in the 90s.
Oh, yeah, I know. I was there.
And these guys that we know were dumb enough they were so eager to be a part of this production that they were willing to put a dress on and be in this movie. Now, when I heard about this, I heard about it like after the fact.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
And I heard like, oh yeah, they were doing some casting for a movie. I'm like, oh, okay, it's cool. What kind of movie were they casting for? It's like it got Wesley Snipes. Oh shit, Wesley Snipes in it? Yeah, but hold on, buddy, before you get excited. It's not that kind of movie.
Okay, so just so I was there. I was one of the people because we were told, like, hey, there's a Wesley Snipes movie being filmed in Nebraska. That blew our minds. Because we think of Passenger 57. We thinking
action.
Yeah, I don't know if White Man Can't Jump was even out yet, but we were thinking all kinds. So we drive all the way to Lincoln for this shot at being extras in a movie, and we all got aspirations. We're sophomores. It's freshman to sophomore year that between transitioning and in college, and so we roll out there, and we get there, and it's four of us. Five of us, excuse me, it's five of us. And we were just so excited. And we were talking shit to each other, like, hey, man, you built like Wesley. Hey, man, you got Wesley's color. Hey, man, they're going to use one of us. And we get there, and the line is coming out like this auditorium, kind of like office building, and it's wrapping around there, like all the way, like 2 or 3 blocks. So we get in line, and we're all excited. But we notice ain't no black people. They're all Mexican people. They're all white people. They're all Hispanic. And I'm like, nigga, we got this. We are shooing. One of us, we gonna be in the Wesley Sides. We were just so fucking hyped, and like, but we didn't know what the movie was. Now we know now what the movie was. The only movie Wesley ever been in Nebraska was Tu Wong Fu. Thank you, Judy Newmar. Some transvestite shit. But at the time, and this is like, I graduated in '97, so this had to be like '94. 94, 95. But in our minds, this is the shit. So we get there. And we wait an hour or so, and the line's moving. And all of a sudden, some kind of way, it came out that there was a dress involved. And I'm like, hey, man, fuck, I'm not built for this. I got to go, y'all. And they made fun. Everybody else made fun of me. Like, hey, man, shit, man, come on, cuz, I'm like, look, man.
Did you drive down there in your truck?
Yes. Yeah, we were two cars deep, my truck and the homie's Monte Carlo. And so we get there, and like I said, some kind of way the dress thing came up. And so I leave. I said, I can't do this. And they're like, man, it's a Wesley Snipes movie. I'm like, look, I don't know about y'all, but I might have kids one day. And I don't want my kids to ever see me in a dress and that's my point. I made up my mind a long time
ago. As a teenager.
Dude, was I a teenager? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I was, because I graduated high school at 17. So I might have been 18, 19 when that happened.
Yeah, teen. You're still a teenager.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, no. So I was like, nah, I'm cool. So I drove from Lincoln back to Omaha. I think by myself, dude. If my truck was a stick, so I'm just shifting like, man, fuck y'all nigga. So fast forward, here's another thing we didn't know. Everybody else came home. We thought that nobody got the part. One of the homies did get the part, or at least one of the homies got a call back. I don't know how that shit turned out, but he's the one who busted me out, trying to bust me out. Was like, hey, Tape, you remember the time we had to wear a dress? Like, we? Nothing. That's a nigga, you French? You got a mouse in your pocket? What the fuck you mean we? Because he never told us. He never told us that he got a call back. Look, the point my brother's trying to make is that this is the shit that you learn from your parents, your grandpa, your grandmas, your elders, your uncles, your aunties, like what you do and don't do. And look, if you're making $30 million and you wear a dress, hey, do that shit, my nigga. That's some life-changing money. But the shit that I was being offered, I don't know what to pay. I left because that's just me. And so, but that's the point. When somebody's an orphan, and when somebody doesn't have that backing, that they'll be more willing to do shit like that than somebody who's like, hey, nah, my parents didn't said that ain't cool. Nah, I wouldn't want to disappoint my mom. Like I remember one of the funniest scenes is, do you remember when they were shooting the first Jackass movie, and it was Steve-O, and they were trying to get him to do that shit when they put the little car in his ass. He's like, man, I can't do that. He said, man, I can imagine my dad saying to me, he's disappointed in me. I wouldn't want to disappoint my father. Like all this dumb shit he did, chasing lions and fucking with dolphins and shit, but he wouldn't do that.
He had a line he was not going to cross.
But that's what you get when you have, like you said, Grandpa's armor. When you have somebody that backs you and they anoint you, they pour that oil over your body and it solidifies and protects you through all kinds of situations. And the things you hand down aren't always physical. Sometimes they're educational. Sometimes they're emotional. Sometimes, hey, count to 10, you get the fuck out of there. Or I remember this one lady said, I don't let my daughter wear makeup, or I don't let my daughter date until she's 17 or 16. You're like, why not? So she can drive away. So you tell your kid, like, if this shit gets out of hand, you tell your son, I don't want you going to parties until you can drive your own car.
That's brilliant.
If something happens, you have to be able to remove yourself from the situation. That's the stuff that we're talking about being handed down. It's not just physical, but stress reliever. I go fishing. Like my mom started taking me fishing when I was 2 and 3 years old. Y'all can believe it if you won't. I've been doing this shit for years. Am I good at it? Nope. I'm great some days, I'm bad on others. But you don't do it to be good at it. You do it to decompress. So you don't take this bullshit into your next endeavor. This is like being baptized where you're washing your sins away. Certain things you do give you that. And for me, it's fishing. Shit, they say a bad day fishing is better than a good day at work. Nigga, that's me, my nigga. I don't need your permission to be me. And like I said, these are the things that we're talking about handed down. Like my brother said, when he touches that weapon, you just feel this reverence. You just like, yeah.
It gives you sight beyond sight.
Yeah, and you can't. That's so invaluable. You can't put a value on that. And the things that we did, the adventures that we had as kids. Like I'm telling you, we were swinging 20, 30 feet in the air. Fuck, at least 30 feet in the air, jumping and going down a hill into a roll. We were doing that shit, and so
we were basically like in stuntman training as little kids.
Oh no! Hey, me and T, the show that fucked us up. When I name this show, you gonna laugh. What is the show that fucked you up? The Fall Guy. It was a show about a stuntman bounty hunter. I could do that. I wanted to be a bounty hunter stuntman, and so we would jump off shit. We would hide in cars. We would jump off cars. The Dukes of Hazzard, going in through the window. How many times you got your ass beat for going through your daddy's window of his car? I got beat. My mom was like, "Hey." My mom had a yellow fucking Datsun B210. We was jumping in the windows and shit. All that shit prepared us for life. You know what I'm saying? All that shit that's what makes us dope. I ain't afraid to fight nobody. I might not win, but I'm not gonna be afraid to fight them. That's the shit you deal with. Like, there's consequences. Like, was it worth it? Because you would do some shit and get in trouble, and your mom be like, was it worth it? I'm like, mine really was. Okay. She beat your ass, and everything was done. That was just it. You learned that shit.
Yeah. But it's important that these practices are handed to the next generation, because
don't lose them. Let's not lose them. No, it's important.
You want them to understand why keepsakes matter. You want them to understand that you don't need nobody has to give you permission to be you, and how you have to draw the lines. You have to understand what you're going to stand for early, so that people cannot pull the wool over your eyes, so that you can avoid deception. That is that discernment that I always talk about has to be cultivated as early as possible, because that lays the groundwork for your morality structure, your Budo, your code that you live by, the Budo code you live by, and that creates the pathways towards greater enlightenment, because then you are fast-tracked becoming a decent person. And that's really what this show is about, is cultivating decent people. Because these conversations have to happen so that people can understand that there's a different view. These guys talk about some shit that you're not going to hear other people talking about. And that's why we'll dedicate a whole show about Grandpa's armor and how these ways of thinking must be carried on into the future.
Look, masculinity is not toxic, and don't if you don't treat somebody bad, you ain't got nothing to worry about. Like if that thing doesn't apply to you, it doesn't apply to you. So don't convince yourself that my masculinity is toxic. No, working on a car, taking care of a woman, helping a friend, that shit is that's civilized. Those are the civilizing things.
There's still women out there that like real men. I hear them say it all the time. They like real men.
Look, even women that like women like real men. That's why some of these women like women, because ain't no real men around. Nobody wants to say the shit that's out there. Look, the reason that we're going through this is that because some people don't know how to be a real man. And look, I get it. Everybody wants to say, like, I can't no woman teach a man how to be. That's not true. A woman knows right from wrong. Teach that nigga right from wrong. That's all you got to do. Teach a boy right from wrong, and he'll be a man that knows right from wrong. And sometimes when people do wrong, they knew it. Like I said, the people we grew up with that were doing wrong, they knew exactly what they were doing. Ain't no excuse for this shit, and they never wanted no excuse. But now you got niggas who like, oh my God, I don't want to go to jail. They start snitching. Like, wait, like that's not right. You knew what you were doing was wrong. There's consequences. You accept those consequences. Accept them. Shit.
Right. And so, but starting early and realizing what builds character, and
not be a character, build character. There's a difference.
That's a good saying right there, for real. Because then you're actually somebody that other real people want to be around. Because listen, man, no matter what you're into in life, eventually you find your people. They're out there. Your people are out there.
That's deep. That's deep. You're gonna find your people.
Yes. Yes.
If you're a scumbag, you're gonna find other scumbag. Like when motherfuckers talk about karma, I said some of this shit ain't karma. Some of this shit is you just hanging out with the wrong motherfuckers, and eventually you're gonna get robbed. Not that you rob somebody else, it's just you hang around thieves, nigga. What the fuck is gonna happen to you?
Right. And so there it is. There's a lot for you to meditate on, to reflect on and think about, and to have conversations with other people about. So that's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.